I never thought I'd be the guy telling one of these stories. You know the type? Husband discovers wife's betrayal, world falls apart, all that stuff. But here I am, 55 years old, 3 decades of marriage under my belt, about to tell you how I caught my wife cheating in our own garage. The funny thing about trust is how it makes you blind. I'd spent my whole life working with my hands, fixing cars, reading the subtle signs when an engine isn't right. But when it came to Lisa, my wife of 30 years, man, I missed all the signs until they started screaming at me. It started with these late-night walks to the garage. Lisa would get this restless look around 11 p.m., slip into her robe, and say she needed some air. "Just going to have some quiet time in the garage, Ray," she'd say, like it was the most normal thing in the world. At first I didn't think much of it. Hell, I spent half my life in garages. Who am I to judge? But something felt off. Maybe it was the way she'd check her phone before going out there, or how she'd come back 20-30 minutes later, slightly flushed, fixing her hair. Little things. Things you don't notice until you start noticing them. I remember the exact moment my gut started screaming at me. It was a Thursday night, around midnight. I woke up to get some water, and through our bedroom window I caught a glimpse of Lisa hurrying to the garage in her nightgown. Something about the way she moved, quick, excited, like a teenager sneaking out, it hit me right in the chest. You know what's crazy? Even then, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she's smoking again, I thought. Maybe she's just going through some phase. 30 years of trust is a hell of a thing to question. But I'm a mechanic. When something doesn't sound right in a car, you investigate. You gather evidence. You don't just hope the problem will fix itself. And my marriage? It was making all kinds of wrong noises. That night, lying in bed after she came back, I made a decision. I was going to treat this like any other repair job, systematic, thorough, and with attention to detail. Only this time, instead of fixing an engine, I was about to uncover just how broken my marriage really was. The next morning, I waited until Lisa left for her admin job at the dental clinic. My hands were shaking as I pulled on my work jacket, same one I've worn for oil changes and tune-ups for the past decade. Funny how different it felt, walking out to investigate my own garage instead of heading to the shop. I remembered every lesson from 30 years of working on cars. Start with the obvious. Work your way to the details. Her silver Honda Civic sat there looking innocent enough in the morning light, but cars don't lie, not to me anyway. First thing I noticed was the passenger seat. Lisa's tiny, barely 5'2", but that seat was pushed way back, like someone much bigger had been sitting there. My stomach turned. In all our years together, I'd never adjusted that seat. Never needed to. The next clue hit harder. There in the cup holder, partially hidden under some receipts, was a crumpled bar tab, 2 tequilas, from O'Malley's downtown, date stamped Tuesday night, when Lisa told me she was too tired to even watch TV with me. My hands were steady now, real steady. The kind of steady you get when you're so angry you go right past shaking. I kept looking. Floor mats showed scuff marks from boots, not Lisa's size 6 flats, and definitely not my work shoes. In the glove compartment, a pack of mint gum I never bought her. The whole car reeked of cover-up. 20 minutes of searching, and each discovery felt like another punch to the gut. But the mechanic in me kept going, methodical, thorough. I found what I was looking for behind the driver's seat, a man's leather glove, black, expensive, the kind of thing a dentist might wear, Dr. James Mitchell. The new guy at her clinic, mid-40s, divorced, drives a BMW, always so friendly when I picked Lisa up from work. "Ray, great to see you. How's the auto business?" Standing there in my garage, holding his glove, I could still hear his fake friendly voice. I put everything back exactly where I found it. A good mechanic never leaves traces of diagnostic work. But as I walked back to the house, I knew this was just the beginning of my investigation. I've always told my customers that timing is everything in engine maintenance. Wait too long, and a small problem becomes a major repair. move too fast, and you might break something that didn't need fixing. This situation needed perfect timing. That night, I pretended everything was normal, watched TV, asked about her day, listened to her lie about a busy schedule at the clinic. Each fake smile from her was like sandpaper on my skin, but I kept my face neutral. 30 years of marriage was about to come down to one night of surveillance. Around 10, I made a show of being extra tired. "Think I'll turn in early," I said, stretching. "That transmission rebuild today really did me in." Lisa barely looked up from her phone, just nodded. I noticed her fingers moving faster now, probably texting him. In bed, I kept my breathing steady, like I was sleeping. At 11:15, I heard her get up. The soft pad of her feet on the carpet, the rustle of her robe, the quiet click of the bedroom door. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought it might give me away. I'd prepared everything earlier. My phone was already in her car, tucked under the passenger seat, set to record audio. The garage security camera I'd installed that afternoon had a perfect view of both car doors. Simple setup, the kind of thing you'd expect from a security-conscious mechanic. Nothing suspicious about that. Through our bedroom window, I watched her hurrying across the driveway. She'd done her makeup. I could see her face catching the garage light as she went in. My wife, all dressed up for her midnight rendezvous, not knowing she was walking into a trap. I lay there in our bed in the dark, listening to the distant sound of the garage door. Every creak, every small noise made my muscles tense. The worst part wasn't the waiting, it was remembering. 30 years of memories playing through my head like some sick highlight reel. Our wedding day, house renovations, Thanksgiving dinners, all of it tainted now, frame by frame, second by second. I checked my watch, 11:30 p.m. Any minute now, I'd have my proof. And then I'd start planning something special for Dr. Mitchell and my dear, faithful wife. The BMW's headlights swept across our driveway at 11:45, engine purring to a stop just out of sight. Even through the window, I could recognize that particular sound. German engineering has its own signature. Dr. Mitchell was right on schedule. I didn't move, didn't even breathe, just watched through a crack in the curtains as he slipped into our garage like he owned the place. The security camera's red light blinked steadily, recording every second of his entry. Professional, polished Dr. Mitchell, sneaking around in the dark like a common thief. My phone would be catching everything now. Their whispered greetings, the rustle of clothing, the soft thud of car doors. I forced myself to stay in bed, though every muscle in my body screamed to go down there, to confront them, to end this right now. But ending it now wouldn't be enough. I needed more than just confirmation. I needed leverage, evidence, something concrete that would wipe that smug smile off Mitchell's face and show Lisa exactly what she was throwing away. The minutes crawled by like hours. From the garage came the muffled sounds of their betrayal, each noise caught on my phone's recording. I lay there letting the rage build, but keeping it controlled, focused. The way you handle a dangerous repair job, no room for mistakes, no space for emotional outbursts. At 12:15, I heard his car start up again, the sound of Lisa returning to our house, her quiet footsteps on the stairs, the bedroom door opening with practiced care. She slipped into bed beside me, smelling of his cologne and lies. I kept my breathing steady, playing the part of the sleeping husband one last time. But my mind was already racing ahead, planning the next steps. The evidence was secure now, video, audio, everything I needed. Tomorrow I'd retrieve my phone and review the recordings, start building my case. But for now, I lay awake in the dark, listening to my wife's fake peaceful breathing, and thought about mechanics, about how every machine, no matter how well maintained, has a breaking point, about how sometimes the only way to fix something is to tear it all down first. Lisa had no idea what was coming, neither did Dr. Mitchell. But they were about to learn that every action has consequences, and I was going to be the one teaching that lesson. I waited until Lisa left for work the next morning before retrieving my phone from her car. My hands were steady, too steady, like they get when I'm working on a particularly difficult repair job, the kind where one wrong move could wreck everything. The garage still smelled faintly of his cologne. Standing there, I had to grip my wrench tight to keep from smashing something, but destruction wasn't the answer. Not yet. Instead, I sat at my workbench, the same one where I'd fixed countless engines over the years, and started reviewing the evidence. The audio recording was crystal clear. There were whispered greetings, giggles, the sounds of kissing. Each noise felt like acid in my ears, but I forced myself to listen, taking notes with the same precision I use for diagnostic reports, times, specific phrases, anything I could use later. "We need to be careful, James," Lisa's voice, barely a whisper. "Ray's been acting strange lately." Mitchell's laugh, smooth and confident. "He's just a mechanic, baby, probably tired from all that manual labor." Just a mechanic. The words echoed in my head as I watched the security camera footage. The video showed everything. Their embrace, the way they moved together, how comfortable they were in my space, my garage, my sanctuary. I've rebuilt engines that were completely shot, restored classic cars that others said were beyond saving. This situation wasn't so different. It just needed the right approach, the right tools, the right timing. First step in any major repair: assess the damage. I opened my laptop and started digging. Dr. James Mitchell, DDS. His dental practice website showed him in expensive suits, perfect smile, the works. Reviews praised his gentle touch and professional manner. I bet they did. A few hours of searching revealed more. His divorce 3 years ago, wife caught him with a patient, a pattern there. His BMW lease, way above his practice's declared income. Interesting. His country club membership, his gambling trips to Vegas, his boat payments, each detail another piece of the puzzle. Lisa's phone was next. 30 years of marriage means knowing passwords. Her messages with Mitchell went back 6 months. "My Ray's so wrapped up in his garage," she'd written. "He doesn't understand me like you do." Each message was like turning another wrench in my gut, but I kept reading, kept cataloging, kept planning. By evening, my workbench was covered in notes, times, dates, patterns of their meetings, financial records, screenshots, everything organized with the same care I use for tracking parts during a complex rebuild. The plan was starting to take shape in my mind. Not just exposure, that would be too easy. No, this needed to be something special, something that would use their own arrogance against them, something that would make them realize that just a mechanic was the last person they should have underestimated. I was starting to understand why I hadn't exploded last night, why my rage felt so cold and focused now. This wasn't going to be a quick fix or a simple confrontation. This was going to be a complete overhaul, the kind that takes time and precision to get right. Looking at my reflection in the garage window, I barely recognized myself. The man staring back had my face, but his eyes were different, harder. Like steel tools in my toolbox, cold, precise, and ready for work. I picked up my phone and made a call to O'Malley's bar downtown. Time to start putting the pieces in motion. "Hey, Mike," I said to the owner, an old customer of mine. "Remember that favor you owe me for fixing your daughter's car? I need some information about a certain customer." Mike from O'Malley's came through with more than I expected. Security footage showing Lisa and Mitchell getting cozy at the bar. Credit card receipts, even the exact booth they always used. Tucked away in the corner, of course. Funny how people think they're being clever when they're really just being predictable. Playing the part of the oblivious husband was wearing on me. Each morning, watching Lisa get ready for work, knowing she spent extra time on her makeup for him. Each night, listening to her lies about working late or having dinner with the girls. The rage inside me had crystallized into something cold and hard, like a bearing that's frozen solid. I started testing their patterns, laying groundwork. One evening, I mentioned having to work late on a special project. "Don't wait up, honey," I said, watching her face carefully. Within minutes of my leaving, she was texting him. I parked down the street and watched Mitchell's BMW pull into our driveway. Right on cue. The next phase involved the bar. I'd found out they met there every Friday before their garage rendezvous, so I started dropping casual mentions about O'Malley's into conversation. "Remember when we used to go there, Lisa? Maybe we should stop by sometime." The way she avoided eye contact told me everything. But the real breakthrough came when I got access to Mitchell's financial records. Mike's daughter works at the bank. Another favor called in. Turns out our successful dentist was swimming in debt. Gambling problems, failed investments, the works. His perfect image was as fake as his concern for his patients' dental health. I spent my days at the shop working on cars, but my mind was always turning over the plan. Each detail had to mesh perfectly, like the gears in a precision transmission. I started making preparations, careful withdrawals from our joint account, moving assets, documenting everything. Lisa was too caught up in her affair to notice. The hardest part was maintaining the facade at home, eating dinner together, watching TV, all while the evidence of her betrayal burned a hole in my pocket. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at her phone, smiling at his messages, and my hand would tighten on whatever I was holding until my knuckles went white. "You seem different lately," she said one night, trying to sound concerned. "Is everything okay at the shop?" I gave her my best tired smile. "Just busy, honey, you know how it is." And I watched her relax, thinking she still had me fooled, thinking her mechanic husband was too simple to see what was right in front of him. Late at night, in my garage, I'd replay their recorded conversations, not to torture myself, but to memorize their patterns, their habits, their weaknesses. Mitchell liked to brag about his practice, his money. Lisa loved to complain about me, about how I didn't understand her. Each word they spoke was another tool in my hands, another part of the machine I was building. I mapped out their Friday routine with military precision. O'Malley's at 8 p.m., drinks, always 2 tequilas for her, scotch for him. Then the garage at midnight, like clockwork, predictable, exploitable. Everything was almost ready, just a few more pieces to put in place. I ran my hand over my tools, each one cleaned and organized in my toolbox. In my line of work, you learn that every job needs the right tools. And for this job, I had everything I needed. "Just a mechanic," I whispered to myself, remembering Mitchell's words. Amazing how someone so smart could be so stupid. They were about to learn that sometimes the simplest tools can dismantle the most complicated lives. Friday morning dawned like any other day, except nothing was normal anymore. I watched Lisa getting ready, humming to herself in the bathroom. She was wearing her best dress, the one I bought her for our anniversary last year. The sight of it made something twist inside my chest. "Big day at the clinic?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. My own reflection in the bedroom mirror looked like a stranger, calm, composed, dangerous. "Oh, you know how it is," she smiled, that practiced lie sliding off her tongue. "Lots of patience, might be home late." I nodded, thinking about the text I'd seen on her phone. "Can't wait for tonight, Jay." Such a simple message, loaded with so much betrayal. At the shop, I went through the motions of working on cars, oil changes, brake jobs, tune-ups. My hands knew what to do without my brain being involved. The real work was already done. Everything was in place. Mike from O'Malley's had confirmed their usual booth would be ready. The bank statements showing Mitchell's gambling debts were printed and waiting in my truck. The security footage from our garage was loaded on my phone. Even the weather was cooperating. Clear skies forecast for the evening. Around noon, Lisa texted me, "Working late tonight, don't wait up." I stared at those words, remembering all the times I'd believed them, all the nights I'd fallen asleep alone, thinking she was dedicated to her job. The fool story I'd told myself because the truth was too painful to see. I closed up the shop early and drove home to prepare. In the garage, their special meeting place, I made some final adjustments. Moved Lisa's car to the perfect position, checked the lighting, tested the recording equipment one last time. Everything had to be perfect. Standing there, surrounded by the tools of my trade, I thought about engines, about how every machine has its breaking point, about how you can run a car into the ground, pushing it too hard, taking it for granted, until something finally gives. Lisa and Mitchell had pushed too hard. Tonight, something was going to give. I showered and dressed with mechanical precision. Dark jeans, black shirt, work boots, the ones that don't make noise on concrete. In my pocket, my phone felt heavy with evidence. In my mind, their words played on repeat. Just a mechanic. He doesn't understand me. He'll never know. The rage that had been building for weeks was still there, but it had transformed into something else, something cold and precise, like a finely tuned engine running at peak performance. I checked my watch, 7:30 p.m. In 30 minutes, they'd be meeting at O'Malley's. By midnight, their perfectly constructed lie would be nothing but wreckage. I took one last look around our house, the pictures on the walls, the shared memories, the life we'd built, 30 years of marriage about to explode like an engine running without oil. But unlike a blown engine, this destruction would be controlled, calculated, precise. My phone buzzed, a text from Mike at O'Malley's. They're here, same booth. I grabbed my keys and headed for my truck. The familiar smell of oil and metal filled my nostrils, grounding me, keeping me focused. Time to show them exactly what just a mechanic could do. Time to demonstrate that sometimes the simplest tools can cause the most devastating damage. Time to prove that every action has its consequences. And tonight, those consequences were wearing steel-toed boots and carrying 30 years of betrayal in his pocket. O'Malley's was busy for a Friday night, but I spotted them easily enough. Their regular booth tucked away in the corner like they were starring in their own private movie. Lisa was wearing my anniversary gift dress. Mitchell had his hand on her knee under the table. I watched them from the bar, nursing a club soda, letting the scene burn itself into my memory. Mike caught my eye from behind the bar and gave me a slight nod. Right on schedule, he started walking toward their table with a fresh round of drinks, the ones I'd already paid for. The last drinks they'd enjoy in their perfect little fantasy world. I pulled out my phone and typed out a message to Lisa. Hey, honey, thinking about you. How about a special night out? I'm already at O'Malley's. Join me. Through my peripheral vision, I watched her face change as she read the message, the color draining from her cheeks, her hand trembling as she showed the phone to Mitchell. His smug smile faltering for the first time. Perfect. Let them sweat. Something wrong? I heard Mitchell ask her, his voice carrying just far enough. We can leave. Lisa shook her head, already typing a response. My phone buzzed. Still at work, honey? Rain check? I smiled into my club soda and typed back, That's funny. I'm looking right at your car in O'Malley's parking lot. The effect was immediate. Lisa's head snapped up, eyes darting around the bar in panic. Mitchell straightened in his seat, trying to look casual while scanning the crowd, but they couldn't see me from their angle. Another small detail I'd planned for. I waited exactly 3 minutes before standing up. In that time, I watched them whisper frantically, watched Mitchell pull out his wallet, ready to make a quick escape, watched my wife of 30 years grip her lover's arm like a lifeline, all according to plan. Walking toward their table felt like moving through water, every step measured, deliberate. I could see the exact moment they spotted me. Lisa's sharp intake of breath, Mitchell's failed attempt at looking composed. The fear in both their eyes was almost beautiful. Well, I said, my voice carrying just enough to make nearby heads turn, isn't this cozy? Mitchell started to stand, probably planning to play the diplomat. Ray, let's talk about this like. Sit down, Doc. My voice was still calm, but something in it made him sink back into his seat. We're all going to have a nice civilized conversation, right here in public. Lisa was shaking now, tears starting to form. Ray, I can explain. Explain? I pulled out my phone, started playing the garage recording, their whispered words, their laughter, their betrayal, filling the sudden silence around our table. Like you explained being too tired last Tuesday? Or how about explaining these? I dropped the stack of bank statements on the table. Mitchell's eyes widened as he saw his own financial records spread out before him. Gambling debts, failed investments, the truth behind his perfect facade. You see, Doc, I continued, my voice steady as a well-tuned engine, while you were busy calling me just a mechanic, I was busy doing what mechanics do best, diagnosing problems and gathering evidence. I pulled up a chair, sat down, and smiled, the kind of smile that makes people nervous. Now we're going to talk about consequences, and you're both going to sit there and listen, because this is just the warm-up. The bar had gone quiet around us, the kind of quiet that falls before a storm. Other patrons were pretending not to watch, but I could feel their eyes. Mike had positioned himself nearby, ready to intervene if needed, but he wouldn't need to. This was going to be surgical, not messy. You know what the hardest part of fixing cars is? I asked, keeping my voice conversational. It's not the mechanical work. It's dealing with people who think they can hide problems. I tapped Mitchell's bank statements. People who think a nice paint job can cover up what's broken underneath. Mitchell tried to gather his dignity, straightening his expensive tie. Whatever you think you know. I know everything. I cut him off, pulling out more papers. Your gambling debts at the Horseshoe Casino, your maxed-out credit cards, the second mortgage on your practice that your partners don't know about, the IRS audit that's coming next month. With each statement, I watched his face grow paler. Lisa reached for my arm. Ray, please, don't. My voice could have frozen oil. 30 years, Lisa, 30 years, and you couldn't even come up with better lies than working late. I played another snippet from my phone, her giggling in our garage, telling Mitchell how stupid I was, how I'd never figure it out. You were so careful about using the garage, I continued, watching their faces. Thought you were so clever. A mechanic's wife using his own space to cheat on him. Must have felt like a real power move. I leaned forward. But you forgot something basic. Mechanics notice details. We have to, or engines blow up. I turned to Mitchell. Tell me, Doc, does the dental board know about your habit of sleeping with patients' wives? Because that's the kind of thing that can really hurt a professional reputation, almost as much as gambling away patient payments. His face went from pale to gray. You're bluffing. Like you were bluffing about your perfect life? I pulled out my phone again, started forwarding files. Right now, your partners are receiving some very interesting financial documents. Should make Monday's meeting exciting. Lisa was openly crying now, mascara running, the same makeup she'd put on this morning, humming in our bathroom. Ray, we can work this out. We can get counseling. Work it out? I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Like you worked it out in our garage? On our anniversary, Lisa? Yeah, I know about that too. Watched the whole thing on camera while you two celebrated with the champagne I'd been saving. Mitchell started to stand again. This is harassment. Sit down. Each word was like a piston firing. We're not done, because now we're going to talk about consequences, real ones. I pulled out more documents. Lisa, remember when you gave James here power of attorney over your retirement account to help manage it better? Her face showed she'd forgotten all about it. Mitchell started to look sick. Turns out, I continued, our friend here has been managing it right into his gambling debt. Half your retirement gone. But hey, at least the sex was good, right? That's a lie, Mitchell sputtered, but his eyes told a different story. A lie? I slid the transfer receipts across the table, like the lie you told her about investing it in blue-chip stocks, or the lie about the returns. Go ahead, Lisa. Look at the numbers. Look what your dental knight in shining armor has been doing with your money while you were busy laughing about your stupid mechanic husband." The devastation on her face as she read the documents was almost beautiful. Mitchell was sweating now, his perfect image crumbling like rust on an old chassis. "But here's the real kicker," I said, standing up slowly. "While you two were so busy being clever, I was busy too. Moving assets, documenting everything, building a case." I looked at Mitchell. "The dental board, your partners, and the IRS will have quite a reading session this weekend." I turned to Lisa. "And you? Check your phone. I just forwarded you the name of my lawyer. The divorce papers are ready. And thanks to all the evidence I've gathered, you'll be lucky to keep the clothes you're wearing." As I pushed my chair back, I smiled. You know what else mechanics are good at? We're good at timing. And right about now, there should be some very interesting emails arriving in some very interesting inboxes. Mitchell's phone started buzzing, then Lisa's, then his again. The dismantling had begun. Their phones kept buzzing as the messages poured in. Mitchell's partners, the dental board, their friends. I watched as their perfectly constructed world crumbled in real time, one notification at a time. "One more thing," I said, still standing. "You might want to clear out of my garage. I had the locks changed this morning." I pulled out Lisa's car keys from my pocket, the ones she thought were safely in her purse. "And you won't be needing these anymore," Mitchell finally snapped. "You can't do this to me," he snarled, half rising. "I'll sue you for defamation." "With what money, Doc? The money you gambled away, or the money you stole from my wife's retirement fund?" I kept my voice level. "Go ahead. Let's get more lawyers involved. I'm sure they'd love to dig deeper into your finances." Lisa was staring at her phone, scrolling through message after message, friends asking what was going on, family members expressing shock and disappointment, her carefully maintained social image dissolving with each new text. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was lonely. You were always in that garage." "That garage paid for everything you have," I cut in, "everything you threw away for this." I gestured at Mitchell, who was now frantically typing on his phone, probably trying to damage control with his partners. "How's that working out for you now?" The weight of 30 years hung in the air between us, 3 decades of shared memories, all tainted now. But instead of pain, I felt something else, something like freedom. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, looking at them both. "You thought you were so superior, the sophisticated dentist, the refined office manager, looking down on the simple mechanic who got his hands dirty for a living." I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Guess what? Those dirty hands just tore your whole world apart, and I did it without breaking a single law. Mitchell's phone rang, his senior partner. He stared at it like it was a snake about to bite him. Lisa was still crying, but now it was the ugly cry of someone seeing their actions' consequences for the first time. "I'll leave you two to figure out your next moves," I said, dropping Lisa's keys on the table, though I doubt they'll involve any more midnight meetings in my garage. As I turned to leave, Lisa grabbed my arm. "Ray, please, we can talk about this. We can—" I gently removed her hand. "We're done talking, Lisa. Check your email tomorrow. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings." I looked at Mitchell. "And Doc?" "Might want to call your accountant. The IRS doesn't like waiting." The last thing I saw as I walked away was their reflection in the bar's window, 2 well-dressed people, looking suddenly small and shabby in their expensive clothes, surrounded by the wreckage of their choices. Mike gave me a nod as I passed the bar. I'd paid everyone's tab in advance, one last act of consideration they didn't deserve. Outside, the night air hit my face like a wake-up call. In my truck, I sat for a moment, listening to the engine's steady idle, clean, precise, honest, everything they hadn't been. Time to head home. I had a garage to reclaim. The garage looked different when I pulled up that night, quieter somehow, cleaner. I'd spent the afternoon clearing out every trace of their betrayal, moved Lisa's car to the driveway, changed the security codes, cleaned every surface. Now it was just my space again, filled with the honest smell of oil and metal. Inside, the house felt empty, but not in a bad way. More like an engine after you've cleaned out all the gunk, ready for something new. I walked through each room, turning on lights, reclaiming my territory. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I packed Lisa's things into boxes. Clean, efficient, methodical. Just like any other repair job. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I left O'Malley's. Messages from mutual friends, family members, even some of Mitchell's colleagues. Apparently, the good doctor's partners hadn't taken kindly to discovering his financial irregularities. Their law firm was already reaching out, wanting to discuss the situation. I let everything go to voicemail. Tonight was for me. Around midnight, I heard Lisa's car pull away from the driveway. She didn't try to come in. Smart move on her part. The locks were changed anyway. Through the window, I watched her taillights disappear, carrying 30 years of marriage away into the darkness. The pain was there, sure, but it felt distant, manageable, like an old injury that's finally starting to heal. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. Mitchell's world collapsed exactly as I'd planned. His partners forced him out after discovering the extent of his gambling and financial misdeeds. The dental board launched an investigation. The IRS scheduled an audit. His perfect life crumbled like rust in the rain. Lisa tried to fight the divorce terms at first, but my evidence was too solid. The garage recordings, the financial documents, everything. Her lawyer advised her to settle quickly. She ended up moving in with her sister in Ohio, leaving behind most of what we'd built together. Sometimes the best repairs require removing damaged parts entirely. I kept working at my shop, fixing cars, rebuilding engines. Customers started bringing in more complex jobs, word getting around about how I'd handled my own rebuild. If he can fix that mess, they'd say, he can fix anything. They weren't wrong. One Saturday morning, about a month after everything went down, I was in my garage, working on a '67 Mustang I'd bought at auction. The engine was shot, the body rusted. Everyone said it was beyond saving. Perfect project for my new life. Mike from O'Malley's stopped by, bringing coffee and news. Mitchell had left town, his practice sold to cover his debts. Lisa had filed for bankruptcy after discovering more of his financial manipulations. Their perfect little affair had cost them everything. "You okay?" Mike asked, watching me clean parts from the Mustang's engine. I thought about it, really thought about it. "You know what, Mike? I am. For the first time in a long time, I really am." He nodded, understanding. "What are you going to do with all this space now?" He gestured around the garage, my sanctuary. I looked at the Mustang, its potential hiding under years of neglect. "I'm going to build something better." That evening, I sat in my garage, surrounded by tools and parts, listening to the familiar sounds of metal on metal as I worked. The Mustang's engine was coming apart under my hands, each piece telling its story. Some would be saved, cleaned up, given new life. Others were too far gone, would need to be replaced, just like parts of my life. My phone buzzed, a message from my lawyer. The divorce was final. Lisa's signature on the last page, ending 30 years in a single pen stroke. I set the phone aside and went back to work on the engine. Some people might have celebrated or gotten drunk. Me, I kept working, kept rebuilding. The thing about being a mechanic is you learn that everything can be fixed one way or another. Sometimes you replace the broken parts. Sometimes you rebuild from scratch. But the key is to keep moving forward, keep working, keep believing in the process. I picked up a wrench, one of my oldest tools, worn smooth by years of use. In the quiet of my garage, surrounded by the honest work of rebuilding, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Real, solid peace, like a perfectly tuned engine humming at just the right frequency. The Mustang would take months to restore. The life I was rebuilding would take even longer. But that was okay. I had time, tools, and most importantly, I had clarity. Sometimes the best repairs start with a complete teardown. Sometimes you have to break everything apart to build something better. Outside, the night was settling in, but my garage was bright and warm. Tomorrow, I'd start on the Mustang's transmission. The next day, maybe the suspension. One part at a time, one day at a time, until everything was running smooth again. Just like always, I'd fix what was broken. Only this time, I was fixing my life.